I'm Gerald Walker, and today I'm going to tell you about forces, acceleration, momentum, collision times, and how everything wrapped up there can help determine the strength of a force. These kind of things will make your life a little bit more interesting. If you see things happening around you, it might even save your life in case of a car accident if you have time to make a quick decision or two. It can also allow you to do seemingly super phenomenal things like punch through a board with your bare knuckles. Since I know this kind of stuff, let me show you how it might work. Don't be afraid. I really know what I'm doing here. I'm going to punch right through.
Ah! Ow! Oh! Ah!
The Kinetic Karnival, energized by Dr. Gerald Walker, professor of physics, columnist for Scientific American, and author of the book, Flying Circus of Physics with Answers.
Hi. There are a couple of bizarre stories in today's paper that dealt with force, really strange stories. Here's one. Ed Brown, he got married the other day and had a party that night for Ed, and I guess the party got a little bit rowdy because during the party, the other people accidentally pushed Ed Brown out the window, and he fell 5 stories. He landed in a kind of a soft garden, and you would think this guy's wedding night's ruined for sure, you know. Well, they came down to pick Ed Brown up, at least the pieces, and the only thing he did was kind of sit up and ask for another drink. How did he do that? He falls 5 stories, probably comes in about 40 miles an hour. How does he survive that kind of impact at the bottom? There's another story over here. A novice parachutist jumps first time 5,000 feet, and he does what I would do if jumping from 5,000 feet. He panics and forgets to pull the ripcord. In fact, he blacks out on the way down. This guy comes in at about 100 miles an hour, but luckily enough, he landed in a few inches of snow on the side of a ravine, slid down to the bottom of the ravine, finally came to a stop, and was perfectly all right. No damage whatsoever. How did he do that? I met a guy a few years ago. He was about 70 years old at the time, and I saw him jump from 50 feet off a ladder into 12.5 inches of water. He terrific belly flop down into the water. He did this for a living, if not for sexual pleasure. How did he pull that off? How did he live through such a terrific impact? Granted, he was landing in water, but such a terrific impact. Well, stunt people do this all the time. They jump from really large heights, 5 stories, 10 stories. They come in 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, and yet they live through it. They make their living that way. They always have to land in something like an airbag in order to manage to survive the fall. Now, what would kill them anyway? It's really not the fall that would kill them. It's a sudden stop at the bottom of that fall that's going to hurt. It's that force that's going to hurt. You have to somehow arrange it where the force is not up to the lethal value if you have any hopes at all of repeating such a stunt. Well, the people that fall into airbags arrange for the force to be a little bit smaller than the lethal value. People unwittingly falling out of 5-story parties, like good old Ed Brown, just by sheer chance land in a soft garden or perhaps into some soft snow or something like that. If you fall from such a great height, you necessarily must get the impact force down below the lethal value. And sometimes you might be able to do a little adjustment on that force that you're going to feel at the bottom of the fall. Let me show you a little demonstration. Here's a raw egg, and if I drop this egg, even from this kind of short height here, you know, the egg would just break and make a terrible mess up here. But I'm going to do something a little bit more clever than that. I need to somehow lengthen the collision time down here, such as Ed Brown falling into a soft garden or the parachutist falling into soft snow. I somehow have to prolong the collision. And if I can do that, I will decrease the impact force the object feels at the bottom, this time an egg. I'll wrap just a little bit of styrofoam around this. Get a little bit of tape here. Wrap it around here. Wrap my finger to the egg, actually. Just a little bit of styrofoam. Now, styrofoam is going to cushion the shock on that egg when it hits the bottom. And that'll lengthen the collision time, and the egg won't even break because the force will be much less. Well, I got a little bit of styrofoam here. Here we go. Well, it almost didn't break. Let me try just a little bit more styrofoam, maybe a little bit more tape, too. Just pack a little bit of stuff's pulling hair off my fingers. A little bit more styrofoam, a little bit more tape, and I've got to lengthen that collision time just a little bit more, and the egg won't break at all then because lengthen the impact time. Here we go. I tell you what. I'll put a little bit more styrofoam around it. Get egg all over my hand, all over that. Now when I drop this, the styrofoam will cushion the collision down here, and it's perfectly all right. Well, don't worry, it's just me. You were fooled? I took karate a long time ago and was impressed about how scientific karate is. Grew up in the Far East, but it's terribly different from Western styles of fighting. One of the things they taught me in the first class was that if you wish to do the most damage to your opponent, you try to hit over a very small area. Not with your full fist, for example, but on a very small area here. Now, you're not determining the collision time or anything like that. You're trying to put all the force you got over a very small area. These first two knuckles, you keep your wrist straight, something like that, and you do a forward punch, straight out, hit on the two knuckles. You concentrate the force on those two knuckles. You concentrate the force over a very small area. And so the stress, which is the force divided by the area of contact, is quite large then. Well, if you don't want to hit on your first two knuckles, you might hit with the side of the hand, such as you see in all kinds of movies these days, the old karate chop. You can also hit with your fingertips like this in what is called a chicken head snatch. Sounds a little bit weird. I saw a guy in karate class once throw a watermelon up into the air and with his stiff fingers like this, slice right through the watermelon, which is a terribly good technique if you're ever attacked by a vicious watermelon. Another thing they taught me in karate class is that you fight with great poise. You do not swing wildly like a cowboy would, following your opponent all the way to the floor. You stay in good control, such as on a forward punch, you start back over here on your hip, and you go out until the arm is fully extended. You keep your shoulders pretty straight. You keep your poise, you keep your stability, and you can make multiple strikes then. that kind of made good sense to me. They also told me something else in that karate class, something that took me a long time to figure out why they were saying it. They said, if you really want to do a lot of damage to your opponent, go out until your arm is fully extended like that, but try to concentrate that your knuckles would stop about 2 inches inside your opponent's body. Sounds pretty gory to me. But you don't hit just wildly. You don't push against your opponent after you make your contact. You go in 2 inches buried inside his body. If you push, you're really not going to do any damage to the person. It's kind of an unfriendly type thing to do, but you're just going to push him down. He's going to get mad at you and get up and beat the dickens out of you. So you concentrate that there's going to be about 2 inches left to go on your forward punch when you make your first contact with your opponent. And I worried, why 2 inches? My karate master, without really understanding it, was telling me some really good physics. When I start back over here with my fist on my hip, I accelerate my fist out, giving it some speed, as much speed as I possibly can. I'm also giving it some momentum. Momentum to a physicist is the mass, in this case my fist, mass, multiplied by the speed of my fist. So I'm giving some momentum to my fist. If I want to do the most damage to the opponent, I want to make first contact with that opponent when my fist has got its greatest momentum. If I hit a little bit too soon, momentum is not as large. A little bit too late, momentum is not as large. In both of those cases, I would not give the maximum force to the opponent that I could do. So I have to concentrate, move in, so that I catch the opponent just when my fist has got its greatest momentum. And that momentum change that occurs just then determines the size of the force. Let me show you an example of this. We've got some concrete bricks up here, and I'm going to try and break one of these bricks. I will warn you that I haven't doctored this thing up with little hairline fractures or something like that, because this thing may not work at all. I'm going to move these support bricks way out as far as I can. Hey, I'm no fool. If I put these support bricks real close and try to break this, ain't nothing going to break but my hand. So I move these things out as far as I possibly can to give as much leverage arm as I can. I'm going to come down in dead center of this brick with what is called a hammer hand strike, as hard as I can, and I'm going to break the brick. If I don't break the brick, I'm going to break my hand. You might worry, why would I break my hand if the brick does not break? Because it's going to be the same force regardless if the brick breaks or not. I cannot change the collision time here. I'm going to try and give as much momentum to my fist as I can. There's going to be a certain force that the brick will feel and I will feel. But if the brick doesn't break, I really hurt my hand, probably break bones inside, and if I hit crooked, I'm even going to break my wrist up here. Kind of exciting to watch. Well, the reason that I hurt my hand is that if the brick does not break, what it does is it vibrates, and it beats the hell out of my hand. So I'm just going to hope that the brick does not vibrate on me at all. You might wonder if it takes great strength to break these things. It doesn't. You just have to be dumb enough to slam your hand against concrete. Let's think about this just for a second. I mean, I get a little worried about the bricks. Just want to make sure you understand what's going on. May not be any repeat on this. I'm going to try to catch this brick when my fist has got its greatest momentum. I'm going to accelerate that fist down as much as I possibly can. And I'm going to catch it. Hopefully, when the momentum is the largest, I'm actually going to aim for the tabletop to try to accomplish that, trying to overshoot the first touch, like my karate master told me. Here we go. That actually helps, you know. This brick may be more masculine than I am. It's no problem. Well, if you look at a slow motion replay of this kind of break, when the hand slams in, if you could see it very, very carefully, what would happen is that you would see the brick bends and a crack starts on the bottom side of the brick and then comes up to the top of the brick. That's when the brick will fully break. It bends like that. If I can bend it enough with the force I'm going to give it, the brick will just snap with me. Well, you might have seen stuff like this on television before, but with a great to-do about it. A lot of Oriental mysticism involved in it. Usually, in order to impress the audience, they will try to break two bricks simultaneously. But there's a trick involved, and let me tell you the trick. I'm going to try to break two bricks up here. I really only tried this once before in my life. Well, I finally got the cast off after about 5 weeks. I'm doing the trick now. I've got the two bricks separated by pencils. If the trick works, what will happen is I come down as hard as I possibly can and hit this top brick. Hopefully it will bend and snap. And here comes the trick. It will then crash into the bottom brick and break it for me. I don't have to have enough strength to break two bricks if they're separated like this. You might see this on television where there's a whole stack of bricks or pine boards or shingles or whatever these people like to slam their hand against. And they always separate those objects. If you could look at a very snapshot of the break, you would find that the fist is well above the currently breaking brick, which might be several inches below. Well, let me try this. Boy, howdy, I don't know if I can do this. Gonna aim for tabletop. Try not to get too intimidated by the brick. If you ever get in trouble in a bar, you really want to impress people, just pull out a couple bricks and put them up on the table. They're really impressed when you break your hand right in front of them. They leave you alone, no problem. Okay. Boy, I'm impressed. And when black belts do this kind of demonstration, they have far greater force than I do. They come in, they really accelerate their hand, they give fantastic momentum to their fist or whatever it is they're striking with, and they can break through piles of boards, piles of bricks, they can break through your bones, they can break your car, they can break anything. Some of these guys can be really mean. The most dramatic example I've ever come across involving spreading a force out over a large area to make it a little bit safer involves a bed of nails. I brought two beds of nails here today, and I'm going to lie down on one of the beds of nails. My weight, which is a force, is not like the force in a karate strike, but nevertheless it's a force, will be spread out over, I hope, enough nails so that the force from each nail is not quite enough to pierce through my skin. At least that's my intention. Let me put this down, And just so that you don't realize and think I'm faking this, I'm going to take my shirt off. I don't really like taking my shirt off in public. I know it's a nice body. I'm going to lie down on this bed of nails, and my weight will be distributed over 75 nails, 80 nails, something like that. Let me get down there. Well, it doesn't feel particularly good, but I don't think I'm being impaled by any of those nails. A little bit nervous about doing this kind of stuff because I kind of hate hurting my body. Let's make it a little bit more dramatic. I'll put another bed of nails down on top so that I'm sandwiched in like a piece of meat. And then, just to make it even more dramatic still, I'll have two gracious volunteers, former friends of mine, stand up on top. One person's going to stand over my vital area. The other person, less vital area. Well, that's a terrific force from each nail. I have their combined weight on top of me, and on the bottom nails, I've got all three people's weight. I think that's enough. Thank you very much. I don't think I'm bleeding anywhere. I can't drink water for at least an hour, or I just leak all over myself. It takes about a day or so for the indentations to go off my body, but I don't think any one nail had enough force on it to pierce through the skin. There's a second part to this kind of demonstration, one that is extremely dangerous. I would advise you, as a matter of fact, not to try any of the stuff on the show. Even the karate stuff can cause massive damage to your hand, break a bone, it'll never mend back correct again. This next thing has really got me worried because I've been absolutely stunned by the demonstration. I'm going to get sandwiched in between the two beds of nails again, and then my assistant's going to put this cinder block on top of the sandwich, and then with as much force as she can muster up, she's going to burst that cinder block with this 12-pound sledgehammer. It's real exciting. But let me warn you that it's exceedingly dangerous. I did this once. I was so stunned by the impact of the sledgehammer that I was lying there for about 5 minutes thinking I had bought the farm, thinking, what a stupid way to die. I'm going to get sandwiched in. And then she's going to put that top bed on. This already hurts. She's going to take 2 practice swings to kind of line everything up because she's a little bit nearsighted. And then she's going to hit on the 3rd swing, and if everything goes okay, I'll get up and tell you why it worked. And if I die right in front of your eyes, then you folks are on your own. Two. Actually, I think I wet my pants. There's 2 good reasons that makes that work, at least most of the time, besides spreading the force out over a large number of nails, so there's a lot of contact area. One reason is that the sledgehammer does not come to a stop immediately in about 1/100 of a second. It takes a lot longer for the sledgehammer to come to a stop if it has to go through a bit of concrete there. If you increase the collision time, you necessarily decrease the impact force down to the survival level, I guess. The second reason is that if I'm to be hurt, I have to be squeezed. Well, one of the tricks involved in the stunt is that I put a large concrete block on top, so there's a lot of mass there. when she hits that block, if I'm to be squeezed, that block has to accelerate downward. With a large mass up there, there's not quite as much acceleration downward, so I don't get squeezed quite as much. Nevertheless, if something goes wrong, it's pretty much curtains. Well, this is a story about forces and momentum and collision time and how everything hangs together to determine the size of the force and the damage from the force. Thank you very much. I'm Gerald Walker. I hope you've enjoyed this. Goodbye. If you'd like to come up and see this bed of nails, feel free to now. Hey, look, we can't finish yet because I couldn't break that board earlier on, but I want you to know it's not my masculinity that was at fault. It was that my assistant flinched, and when she flinched, there was no way for me to hit the center of the board and bend it enough to start a crack. I've actually got to bend that board so much that it rotates around its ends, held firmly in the hands, and she didn't hold it firmly in the hands, and so I couldn't rotate the board around those ends and bend it enough to cause it to crack, and so I just kind of racked up my hand here. I'm going to try it again, but with a sturdier assistant this time, and I'm sure that I could be able to break it this time. He's going to really brace it against his stomach, and I'm going to hit it as hard as I possibly can, and I'm sure it's going to break this time. Here we go. Oh, boy.
Ah! Oh!